172. That was Labour's majority in 2024. The biggest landslide in a generation. A government with the power to do almost anything. 2 years later, that same party polled 17%. Third place, tied with the Conservatives. For the first time in its history, Labour finished third. Let that sink in. The most dominant party in Britain, humbled in 24 months. Governments usually fall slowly. This one fell at a sprint. Now picture a yellow bus in Greater Manchester. A commuter taps her card. £2. The same £2 it has cost since 2022. While the rest of England watched fares climb, hers stayed frozen. The man who froze that fare now wants to run the country. His name is Andy Burnham. They call him the King of the North. He walked out of Westminster 9 years ago. He chose to run a single city instead. Now he is the favorite to walk back in as Prime Minister. CNN calls it Britain's 6th Prime Minister in 7 years. Time says he would be the 7th in 10. So here is the question. How does a party win everything, then lose everything in 24 months? And why is the man cleaning up the mess someone who quit Westminster almost a decade ago? Can one man's bus fare really save a whole country? Here is the story everyone tells. A popular northern mayor stayed clean while Westminster fell apart. Now he rides public anger back to power. Labour collapsed, they say, because the country moved right. Reform UK on the march. Nigel Farage, finally within reach of real power. It is a clean story. It is also partly wrong. Look at what actually happened in May. In one round of local elections, Labour lost almost 1,500 councillors. 38 councils gone. Reform gained almost exactly the number Labour lost. On the surface, that looks like a country lurching right. But here is the part the headlines missed. Look at where Labour's own voters actually went. Of the people who backed Labour in 2024, only 46% stayed loyal. 22% went to the Greens. 16% went to the Liberal Democrats. That is the left door, not the right. Labour did not mainly bleed to Farage. It bled to its own left flank. And the country did not so much move right as shatter. Reform, Labour, the Conservatives, the Greens, the Liberal Democrats. 5 parties, each clustered near 20%. A nation split 5 ways. And a voting system built for 2. First past the post was never designed for this. It hands seats to whoever comes first, even on a third of the vote. A shattered map and a system that cannot read it. That is the real story of the collapse. Not a swing to the right. A coalition coming apart in every direction at once. So why did Starmer fall? It was not one thing. It was a slow bleed. Start with one name. Peter Mandelson. A Labour grandee, an architect of the party's modern image. Starmer sent him to Washington as Britain's ambassador. In September 2025, the government sacked him. The reason was his links to Jeffrey Epstein. By February, he had resigned from Labour and from the House of Lords. He faced a police investigation. It was one wound among several. But it bled onto the man who had promoted him. Underneath it all, a cost of living crisis that never really eased. A party that won on change, then started to feel like more of the same. Only 39% of voters trusted Labour to provide stable leadership. By June, Starmer was finished. On the 22nd, he announced he would step down. The same day, Burnham declared he was running. Step back and count. 6 prime ministers in 7 years. Soon perhaps a 7th in 10. A great power, changing its leader like a struggling football club changes managers. Each new face promising stability. Each one deepening the sense that nobody is in control. Into that vacuum he steps. And his entire national pitch rests on one number. £2. The frozen bus fare. He wants to do to your energy, water and rail bills what he did to that fare. Freeze them. Think of it as a discount you never lose. Netflix cuts the price and adds more shows. Wonderful for you. The question is always the same. Who pays the difference? But to really understand the bus, you have to go back 40 years. 1986. Margaret Thatcher's government deregulated the buses. Outside London, almost anyone could run almost any route. The promise was that competition would make buses better and cheaper. It did not. In 1986, Greater Manchester took 355 million bus journeys a year. By 2019, that had fallen to 182 million. Nearly half the passengers simply gone. Routes that did not make money were quietly cut. Fares went up. Service got worse. And the people who needed buses most were left waiting. The young, the old, the people without a car. For them, a bus that never comes is a job they cannot reach. Now compare London. London was never deregulated. It kept one network, one fare system, public control. Over the same years, London's bus use roughly doubled. One city kept the wheel. The other let go. The gap between them is the entire argument. So in 2023, Greater Manchester did something no English region had done in 40 years. It took back control of its buses. It was a slow, expensive, legal fight to get there. But the result was one network, public fares, one brand. They painted the buses yellow and called it the B network. That is where the £2 fare comes from. Not a slogan. A 40-year argument finally settled in one city. And we have seen a version of this move before. Boris Johnson ran one city, London. Bikes, buses, and Olympics. He turned a city brand into a ticket to Downing Street. He won big. Then the gap between showmanship and government swallowed him whole. A few visible wins can hide the absence of a plan. Burnham is running a strikingly similar play. So which is it, competence or charisma? But here is what the legend buries. A columnist at the Financial Times noticed something strange. Burnham's platform as a candidate is more left-wing than anything he did as mayor. And his record as mayor was already to the left of Starmer's government. Read that again. The less power he holds, the more radical he sounds. Why would that be? As mayor, his powers were real but narrow. A mayor controls some buses, some transport, some housing. He does not control the treasury. Narrow power forces hard choices. It forces you to be pragmatic. As a candidate, he holds no executive power at all. So the rhetoric is free. It costs nothing to promise the world when you cannot yet write the check. Watch what happens when he finally can. To see the King of the North born, rewind to 2020. October, the second wave of the pandemic. The government wanted to push Greater Manchester into the toughest tier of restrictions. Burnham wanted money for the workers it would hurt. He stood on a plaza in Manchester and went to war with Downing Street. He first asked for £90 million. Then he lowered it to £65 million, calling it a bare minimum. The government's final offer was £60 million. They were about £5 million apart. And then the talks collapsed. The restrictions were imposed anyway. Greater Manchester was left with just £22 million. On live television, he learned the final number as he spoke. It was never really only about the money. It was about a northern city being told what would happen to it, with no say. For millions in the north, it landed like a verdict from a distant capital. Here was someone finally saying no on their behalf. It did not matter much that he lost the fight. What mattered was that he had the fight at all. That afternoon, a local mayor became a national figure. The King of the North was not a title he asked for. It was the one the standoff handed him. Which brings us back to those yellow buses. The living proof that it all works. And here the story gets complicated. Ridership is up 14% year on year. That number is real. But hold it next to another number. Overall bus use is still below where it was in 2017. Both numbers are true. They tell opposite stories. And the accounts. The transport authorities' own auditors refused to sign them off cleanly. They flagged a financial hole. Fare revenue had come in lower than planned. Freeze the price and more people climb aboard. But the missing money has to come from somewhere. The proof of concept has an asterisk. And yet, it would be too easy to say none of it works. Because some of it clearly does. Take homelessness. Greater Manchester ran a scheme called Housing First. Instead of asking rough sleepers to earn a home, it simply gave them one. More than 450 people were housed. Around 88% kept their tenancy. For people the system had written off, that is remarkable. Picture someone who slept in a doorway for years. Handed the keys to a flat of their own, no conditions attached. That is not a statistic to them. Then there is work. By one account, a good employment charter signed up hundreds of employers, reportedly covering tens of thousands of workers. And the buses are not only cheaper. By some measures, punctuality improved under public control. Those last figures still need careful checking. But the direction is consistent. Where Burnham held real narrow power, he often used it well. And that is exactly what makes the national question so hard. Come back to our commuter. Her ride is genuinely better. Cheaper, more frequent, more reliable. She is also the test case. She is writing a model that may not balance its own books. Her experience is real. The headline is contested. And that tension is the whole story. So what does all this mean for you? Strip away Manchester for a moment. The real question is national. Can he freeze a country's bills the way he froze a city's fare? So what does freezing a bill actually mean? A frozen price is really a hidden subsidy. Someone agrees to eat the difference between the true cost and the price you pay. In a city, that someone is a council budget, balanced every year. On a bus network, the sums are small enough to manage. Tens of millions, not tens of billions. But energy is a different beast entirely. When wholesale gas prices spiked in 2022, freezing bills cost the country tens of billions. A national bill freeze is the same idea, scaled up 1,000 times. The logic is identical. The price tag is not. What works at the scale of a city can break at the scale of a country. Not because the idea is wrong, but because the numbers stop being survivable. The bull case is genuinely strong. Against Farage, Britons pick Burnham as the better prime minister. 43% to 23%. A 20-point gap. Ask who would simply do a good job in the role. Burnham leads on 35%. Badenoch on 29%. Farage on 27%. Rayner and Miliband trail far behind. By one measure, he is the least disliked politician in Britain. His net favorability is -4. That sounds bad until you see the others. Everyone else is deeper underwater. In a field nobody loves, he is the one they dislike least. In normal times, -4 would be a quiet disaster. In this field, it makes him a giant. That is less a verdict on Burnham than on everyone around him. Now the bear case. A city cannot run a deficit. A country can. And that is not the strength it sounds like. Manchesterism may work precisely because Manchester is not a country. A mayor has to balance the books every single year. That discipline is part of what kept him honest. A national budget quietly removes that discipline. Freeze every bill and someone somewhere still pays. Maybe it is the taxpayer. Maybe it is the next generation. But the bill never simply disappears. Think of it like a household. A city is a family that must balance its budget by the end of every month. If the rent is frozen, something else has to give. A country is a family with a printing press and a credit card. It can paper over the gap for years, until the markets or the lenders decide it cannot. So how would he actually pay for it? Here the plan gets bolder than most people realize. Start with the tax on your home. Council tax in England still uses property values from 1991. Read that date again. 1991. Those prices are 35 years out of date. A mansion can pay barely more than a modest flat. Burnham backs tearing it up. One proposal taxes a home at 0.48% of its real value every year. It would sweep away both council tax and stamp duty. For some households, that means a smaller bill. For others, a far larger one. He would also cut business rates for pubs by a fifth. Fairer in theory for many. Brutal in practice for some. And every winner creates a loser who votes. This is the part that does not fit on the side of a bus. Remember Boris and his buses. The thing that made him loved was the thing that undid him. A brand built on a handful of visible wins. And no costed plan underneath. The danger for Burnham is not that he is too left. It is that the slogan is the easy part. The budget is where brands go to die. So here are 3 ways to read the man. In order of risk. 1. The executive Britain has been waiting for. A pragmatist who actually delivers. 2. A brand with no costed plan. A slogan that shatters on contact with the Treasury. 3. The truth somewhere in between. A good mayor, gambling that a country runs like a city. We started with 2 numbers. 172. 17%. A landslide and a collapse, 24 months apart. Labour's whole bet is that one man's brand can reverse it. We know more now than we did at the start. We know the country bled left, not right. We know his radicalism grows as his power shrinks. We know his proof of concept cannot yet sign its own accounts. And we know that where he held real power, he often used it well. What we still do not know is the hardest part of all. Whether any of it survives contact with a national budget. Picture that commuter one last time. £2. A fare that held while everything else rose. That is the promise. A whole country at the price of a bus ride. It is a beautiful promise. It might even be the right one. But a city is not a country. A city can be a laboratory. A country is the experiment everyone has to live in. So here is the question we leave you with. Burnham froze a city's bus fares at £2. Can the same man freeze a whole country's energy and water bills without blowing up the budget? Or does Manchesterism only work because Manchester isn't a country?